Good evening. It is July 13th, 2021, 7 p.m., actually 7:03 p.m. Welcome to the San Marino Unified School District Board of Education meeting. Here is your board president, Shelley Ryan.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. I'd like to call the opening of our session. This is a procedural item, and I'd like you to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Choi, would you lead us?
Place your hand over your heart. Let's begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. May I have an approval of the agenda? This is an action item.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Jack.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. And with that, I would like to do a roll call. Mr. Kalaki?
Aye.
Mr. Chang?
Aye.
Mrs. Chong?
Aye.
Mrs. Jack?
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan? Aye. And so the motion is approved. Public comment. The Board of Education has adopted Board Policy 9323B to ensure the public's right to be heard in any matters pertaining to the San Marino Unified School District. Persons who wish to provide public comment will have three options to submit public comments. First, they may submit through an online form. Second, request to speak during the meeting via question and answer and phone dial-in. Third, to request to speak during the meeting in person via the public comment card. You may also submit through an online form. The public was able to submit public comments for the open or closed session today on July 13th from 11 a.m. through 3:30 p.m. The comments received during this time will not be read during the meeting, but will be provided and was provided to the Board of Education. Requests to speak during the meeting through question and answer and phone dial-in. During public comment, the meeting will pause for 1 minute to take requests to speak. The raise your hand function is used to take requests during the public comment period. For online attendees, press the raise hand icon to add yourself to the queue. For phone attendees, dial *9. The speaking order will be determined based on the order of requests received. Individual speakers will be unmuted and called to speak. Requests to speak during the meeting in person via the public comment card. Please complete the public comment card. Submit the completed card to the designated drop area with the assistant to the superintendent no later than when the agenda action item not on the agenda, consent, information, action is called by the board president. There will be opportunities for public comment. They're offered prior to closed session, at the start of the regular open session for items not on the agenda, prior to the consent, information, and action items for matters on the agenda. The Board of Education reserves the right to add a public comment period prior to any individual item on the agenda. 5 minutes may be allotted to each speaker, a maximum of 20 minutes to each subject matter. However, in the event there are more than 4 speakers on the same subject matter, the board president retains the discretion to adjust and limit the time allocated to each speaker to ensure that all wishing to speak will be heard within the 20-minute allotment. 7A, communication from the audience regarding matters not on the agenda are to be made at this time. This is an informational item only. Dr. Choi?
We are pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak on matters not on the agenda. If you would like to speak on matters not on the agenda, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. "30 seconds remain. If you'd like to make a request to speak on matters not on the agenda, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. President Ryan, we have no requests.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. And 7B, communication from the audience regarding matters on the consent agenda are to be made at this time. This is also an informational item. Dr. Choi.
Again, we are pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding matters in the consent section. If you'd like to speak on matters in the consent section of the agenda, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. "30 seconds remain. If you would like to make a request to speak regarding matters in the consent section, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. President Ryan, we have no requests.
Thank you so much, Dr. Choi. And so with that consent section, may I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent section.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Chung. Thank you, Mr. Kalaki. And so with that, the consent section 8A to 8F. Mr. Kalaki, roll call.
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Chung,
Aye.
Mrs. Jack,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. And so the motion has passed for the consent section. Next, we have communication section. This is a procedural item. 9A, communication from the Board of Education. This is an informational item only. Let's begin with Mr. Kalaki.
Since the last meeting, I've had some conversations with members of the community. They've expressed interest in what our plan will be for superintendent. And I explained that we would be coming together as a board and thinking of different options. And so no decision had been made when I was talking with the board or with the community members, but there's obviously interest in it. And I find that encouraging because our community is interested in our schools and our futures. So that's really the main gist of what's been going on so far.
Thank you, Mr. Chang.
On the July 2nd, 11:30 to 2:30, yeah, I serve as a volunteer for grade 9 for class of 2020. I'm very excited. You know, the last year we did not have an opportunity to serve for volunteer. So this year we did 2 times for class of 2020 and 2021. I think this show this community very unique. Yeah, and the student parent, they always trying to give a student a very safe environment after graduation and celebrate their achievement at the high school life. So even I'm not the lead, just a volunteer, I always appreciate all the community work and the PTA and the Grade 9 committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Mrs. Chung, please.
Yes, the last time we met was actually before Measure E passed, so I just wanted to say thank you to the community for supporting our schools in their efforts for that endeavor, as well as the vote outcome itself. Grad night was very successful on July 2nd. That was a big thing that I did a couple weeks ago. And again, huge thank you to the community for volunteering and to everybody who just really stepped up, and to the district staff. During that evening, I had written it down and I forgot to say it. So I wanted to say thank you to the district staff because they supported us tremendously in all of our endeavors as well. One other thing I was able to do last week was to, at the invitation of the summer school teacher, I visited a US history class. And it was actually really interesting because they participated in something that was very different. They actually engaged in this project-based learning project where they were seeking to designate the Donner Railroad's protected designated landmark in order to preserve history. And what was interesting about it wasn't necessarily their objective or the goal they were seeking, but what was interesting was that they were able to engage in this really hands-on real world problem where they reached out to politicians and they reached out with historians, and they were really excited about the idea of learning in a new way that wasn't necessarily just reading from a textbook or just reading about things. And so that was really interesting hearing from them. And it was funny because they didn't even necessarily believe in the outcome, but they really appreciated the process of the endeavor. So I enjoyed that opportunity.
Mrs. Jack.
With the approval of our now former superintendent, Dr. Wilson, and President Ryan, I started my visits to the school sites, with the first one being my meeting with Jason Kirkenbach, principal at the high school.
Thank you. So for my communication, it really has to do with following up with what Mrs. Chong said in terms of just thanking our old guards, thanking our community for not one, but 2 grad nights, and celebrating our children's success and our students, but also a great big thank you. I'm going to launch us into the next item, which is really to recognize our fellow board member, Mrs. Nam Jack, for her work with our stakeholders in leading the charge and leading us through not one, but a second, right? Like this is our second attempt at Measure E. And so congratulations. And I'm so honored to be sitting beside you. So I'm just going to stop there and go on to my next item, except I have to introduce our, we need communications from our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Linda Delatorre.
Thank you, President Ryan and members of the Board of Education. This evening, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing to the Board of Education our newest hire. And Mary, would you come on up to the podium, please? And Principal Topalian, if you'd like to join her. So Mary Hazlett has joined the Huntington Middle School team as our newest assistant principal. She is going to make a wonderful, wonderful addition to our team. So we're very excited to have her with us. She comes to us from Agora Hills High School, where she was an assistant principal of curriculum and instruction, and she was also in charge of activities there. In addition to her experience at Agora Hills, she also worked for La Cañada High School, where she was an assistant principal there as well. And Mary is a wonderful, very well-trained, student-centered administrator. She cares a lot about kids. She's particularly interested in middle school children at this stage of her career. And she has been trained in programs such as Link Crew and the web program. I know that she's familiar with the multi-tiered systems of support and Universal Design for Learning, which are 2 programs that we are currently training all of our teachers in. So please join me in giving her a very warm welcome to San Take this opportunity to see if Principal Topalian would like to make any comments about his new hire.
Well, I'm extremely delighted that we have a new hire and a new member of the HMS team, and I am extremely honored that Mary chose us. And we are a great team, and we are a great group of people and staff with our students and our community at Huntington Middle School. It's a special place. It's one of the best schools in San Marino Unified School District. In fact, it's the best middle school in San Marino Unified School District. And I'm extremely honored to be the principal, and I'm so delighted that to have Mary come on board with us and to be part of the great things that we're doing. And just so you know, as a board, and I think that, and for some of our new board members, Nam Jack, and for Michael Kalaki, as you know, I don't know if you know that Huntington Middle School is going to be a National Blue Ribbon school, and we are extremely delighted about that. The joy of that, and now Mary to have to come on board to be part of that. But that just goes to show you the commitment of our staff, our instructional staff, and our teachers at Huntington that have been there for a long time. You know, this is my third year there at Huntington. It'll be Mary's first, and that just shows you the commitment that our staff has to our kids and the great work they're doing. And so we're delighted that Mary's on board with us.
Thank you, Principal Topalian. Say a few words.
Yes. Thank you, President Ryan, members of the board, Dr. Delatorre, members of the cabinet, and Principal Topalian. I'm honored to be joining the San Marino Unified School District and the HMS community. Having grown up and lived most of my life in the San Gabriel Valley, I know the high performance and expectations you have here and believe I'm a great fit to serve as the assistant principal at Huntington Middle School. As I've already shared with a few of you, I have high expectations for myself and everyone around me, and I love working with students. So I look forward to getting to know you and the students and the families of San Marino, and I welcome your wisdom as I get up to speed. We're going to have a great year, and I'm thrilled to be assisting Principal Topalian as we get back to regular school and activities again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Next, we have communication from the audience regarding matters on the information agenda, which are to be made at this time. Dr. Choi.
Thank you, President Ryan. We will now pause for 1 minute to take requests regarding matters in the information items of the agenda. So if you'd like to make a request to speak regarding matters, information items on the agenda, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. Go ahead and start the 1 minute timer now. We have 30 seconds remaining. If you would like to make a request to speak regarding information items on the agenda, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. President Ryan, we have no requests.
Thank you so much, Dr. Choi. And with that, in 11A, we have recognition of our board member, Mrs. Nam Jack, Dr. Linda Delatorre.
Thank you, President Ryan, members of the Board of Education, and Mrs. Nam Jack. With the renewal of Measure E on June 29th, San Marino voters affirmed that they truly value the 33 instructional and enrichment positions that help maintain lower class sizes and provide enhanced educational opportunities for all students in the areas of core instruction, counseling, PE, world languages, and the visual and performing arts. This was made possible with Mrs. Nam Jack's passion, her involvement, and her leadership. Without Measure E, the district would have lost $4.1 million from its 2021-22 budget. The district and the Board of Education are exceedingly grateful for the count them, 4 successful parcel tax measures that this incredible leader has managed for us. She has had just the best success in connecting with our community, energizing our community, getting our community members to be involved and to care and to support our school district. She ran this with unsurpassed organizational skills, tenacity, class, dignity, and grace. In addition to NAM, the district and the Board of Education are appreciative for the efforts of her hardworking team of parents and citizens who all made this possible. We are so incredibly fortunate to have this lady leader as a member of our Board of Education and as a concerned and caring and passionate and amazing member of our community. We are so lucky to know her and to work with her and work for her. It is with a debt of gratitude to you, Mrs. Jack, that we present you with this plaque of our appreciation, which reads, the San Marino Unified School District Board of Education honors Mrs. Nam Jack for her service as the Measure E campaign chairperson for 2021. Thank you so much for your leadership, Mrs. Jack. You are an amazing, amazing person, and we love you dearly. Can we get a picture of Nam with her family? Yes. Get the entire, come on.
President Ryan, though. Can I say a few words?
Yes.
I'd like to say these few words. I don't know whether they're few, but I would like to make a statement only to publicly acknowledge all of the numerous people that helped, because it really wasn't me. It really was all of the people who helped this district and recognized the, dire straits that we were in. So it has been a very short but intense journey with so much support from so many individuals and community organizations. I know that my worries and sleepless nights were shared by all of those who recognized that the district would forever be changed if we could not pass the measure. I think of the passage of Measure E in two phases. The first phase being the Measure E campaign in March. The measure had strong support at that time, but not enough to pass with the necessary 2/3 approval. For that phase, I think we owe a debt of gratitude to the co-chairs of that campaign, Jennifer Schwang, Alan Chen, Chris Mailing, and their committee. They did an extraordinary job. For the second phase, I feel this community got a second chance to make things right when, thanks to this board, they decided to remove the no sunset provision and call for an election on June 29th. With the parents and community leaders and volunteers being faced with the harsh and bleak reality of 33 full-time positions being eliminated, this community rallied like I have not seen in a very long time. There was a groundswell of support and creativity. The Chinese Club, the entire board, especially Maggie Lee, who gave the committee the first checks to kickstart the campaign. Also past president and past co-campaign chair Alan Chen, who provided so many words of wisdom and advice. To the San Marino Schools Foundation, the entire board, but especially the executive committee, Aaron Belvado, Zaina Dowd, Michelle Espenshade, and Catherine Oliveras. There was not one time when they declined to accept my numerous, and I mean numerous, calls for help. The PTA Council, the entire board, but especially Catherine Oliveras, Marissa Kelly, Becky Watlington, Allison Muller, and Helen Kim Spitzer. They were so very, very supportive and also never declined my Zoom invitations. PTA affiliates, their entire board, and two of them are here today, Stephanie Duncan and Liz Neer. Their response to my request for help was all that I imagined that everybody said the PTA affiliates would always do, which is support this district. Annie Tang and her husband Robin for their inventive and oh so entertaining Home Alone video. To Ed Z, who turns out is Rosa Z's son, who
Yes.
agreed to be our website creator in a parking lot in a very hot Sunday afternoon. To Louis Cassi, who started the creative and so successful fundraiser Measure E pop-ups, forever grateful for her boundless energy. For Becky Watlington, Micah O'Mara, and Cheryl Freiberg for the Measure E signs that became such a hot commodity. To Susie and Eric Lee, Darbin Chan, Kate Simon for the rallies with the children that were precious. Finally, to Lisa Link and Karen Wick. To Lisa, who agreed to be the chair when I became the school board member, and Karen Wick, who agreed to be the treasurer of the committee. It was not just their titles, but their friendship and the time that they gave to support me, which I will be forever, ever grateful. So I always feel that it is important that people make a difference. I did not make the difference. All those people that I have named made that difference for this district. And for all the numerous people that I omitted or forgot to mention, I apologize ahead of time. But this really was a community effort. And I appreciate every one of those people who took their time to vote and to help. So thank you very, very, very much. I would like to make one last statement. I would like to thank this board for welcoming me as a new quote unquote returning member, and for Corey Barbary, who he took my seat and I guess I'm taking his seat. So I would really like to thank Corey. And if you're in Nashville, Tennessee, which is, I know where you are, but Corey, really a shout out to you. I thought you were a great board member in my absence. Anyway, thank you, Corey, and thank you to the board and the staff.
Thank you, Mrs. Jack. Next in 11B, we have recognition of partners to COVID safety, Dr. Linda Delatorre, and board member C. Joseph Chang. Mr. Chang?
Oh, I just would like to introduce this item. Thank you, President Ryan, members of the board. I am so grateful for the amount of time and support that Mr. C. Joseph Chang has given to this community in assisting with the COVID-19 issue in and of itself, along with Dr. Stephen Choi, who has really worked, side by side with Mr. Chang. And so I would like to turn it over first to Dr. Stephen Choi to talk about the recognitions that will be given out tonight for some partners who helped us carry out the vaccinations. And then I will turn it over to Mr. C. Joseph Chang to also express his sincere appreciation to each of these groups. So Dr. Choi.
Thank you, Dr. Delatorre, President Ryan, members of the board and executive team. It is my honor tonight to recognize 4 partners that have helped the San Marino Unified School District improve its safety for both students and staff. Since the pandemic started in March of 2020, the SMUSD has always prioritized safety in the fight against COVID-19. The district was meticulous in implementing many safety protocols that included masking, distancing, cleaning, screening, temperature checks. However, arguably, the two most powerful tools the district used in protecting staff and students were COVID testing and vaccinations. While the district is quite experienced with educational testing, we were not so confident with implementing coronavirus tests or vaccines. It is with tremendous gratitude that we take this opportunity to thank the following partners for helping us test and vaccinate our staff and students. I will introduce all four partners first, then invite them to come up and receive their certificate of recognition, and then also conclude with a photo with the Board of Education. The first partner we are recognizing is the Chinatown Service Center. The Chinatown Service Center was initially introduced to the SMUSD by our very own board member, Mr. C. Joseph Chang. The Chinatown Service Center is also established back in 1971 and is currently one of the largest community-based Chinese American health and human service organizations in Southern California. Between February and April of 2021, the Chinatown Service Center provided SMUSD with convenient on-site saliva-based PCR testing to both faculty and staff. This was a valuable service that enabled SMUSD to safely bring back teachers and staff for the reopening of in-person instruction. I want to thank the Chinatown Service Center Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Jack Cheng, joining us today. As well as Chinatown Service Center CEO, Mr. Peter Ng, for helping the district conduct testing events while the district was in the red and orange tiers. Remember those colors?
Yeah.
I also want to thank the Chinatown Service Center patient care and healthcare teams, some pictured on the slide here, who worked expeditiously to register our staff, pre-label specimen tubes, and coordinate the logistics involved in successful COVID testing. The next partner we are recognizing is COVID Testing 24. The story of how COVID Testing 24 started is a fascinating one. Mr. Weston Suh, who is also joining us tonight. Weston is a Carver as well as a Huntington parent who initially reached out to Principal Dr. Lin to offer free COVID testing to our students and staff. When I first talked to Weston, he stated that he is not a health professional, but rather a restaurant entrepreneur that struggled to access COVID testing when he needed it most. Weston felt a calling and created COVID Testing 24 as a pop-up operation on the corner of Las Tunas Drive and San Gabriel Boulevard to make COVID testing more accessible. COVID Testing 24 turned out to be a great district partner because nearly all of our student athletes and staff who participated in youth sports needed routine COVID testing. COVID Testing 24 provided convenient drive-through testing and later on-campus testing at San Marino High School from February through June 2021. It is my honor to recognize Mr. Weston Suh for his innovation, courage, and generosity to the SMUSD community. I also wish to mention Omnipathology, who served as COVID Testing 24's testing lab for tailoring their operations to meet the needs of our students, and was a real pleasure to work with. Thank you, Mr. Suh. So let's shift from testing to vaccinations. We will next recognize Keck Medicine of USC. I want to again thank Mr. C. Joseph Chang for introducing the district to the USC team. When COVID vaccinations first became eligible for educators, school districts were very hush-hush about their vaccination partners because there was very limited supply and very high demand. Keck Medicine of USC took a leadership role and proposed a joint vaccination clinic that would offer the Pfizer vaccine to all educators of the San Marino, South Pasadena, and La Cañada Unified School Districts. The joint event not only alleviated concerns about scarcity, but actually infused a positive spirit of collegiality, as we were all truly in this together. The vaccine clinic was expanded to include private schools and education partners in the SMUSD community, including St. Felicitas and Perpetua School, Southwestern Academy, A Child's Garden School, Chinese School of San Marino, Right at School, and the Armory Center for the Arts. Joining us tonight to represent Keck Medicine of USC is Sharon Lee. Sharon is the Associate Administrator for Ambulatory Care Integration and Acquisitions. Keck Medicine CEO, Smita, describes Sharon as the one who ran the vaccine operation and worked tirelessly to get every shot into a willing arm. Smita could not be here today, but I would be remiss to not mention her San Marino ties. Smita's husband is a SMUSD alum, having attended Valentine School and graduated from San Marino High School in 1992. It is my honor to recognize Sharon, Smita, and the entire Keck Medicine of USC team for being on the front lines and helping our educators be one of the first to get vaccinated. Finally, last but definitely not least, we are recognizing Albertsons for partnering with SMUSD to administer the Pfizer vaccine to SMUSD students ages 12 and up from May through June 2021. I was initially introduced to Albertsons through SMUSD parents Krishna Rao and Allison Champon. What impressed me most about the Albertsons partnership was how quickly they responded to our needs and limitations. The district had never hosted an on-site vaccine clinic, but with the leadership of Christine Huang, who is here tonight, and Chi Nguyen, who also served as my primary contact, helped us navigate through the logistics in a very short period of time that ultimately transformed our Barth Athletics complex into a vaccination site. The Albertsons vaccination event highlighted another reason why the SMUSD community is the best. When she told me to find 15 volunteers to help with traffic flow, registration, and observation, I was a little nervous given that we had less than 2 weeks to plan. To my pleasant and very grateful surprise, the SMUSD community of volunteers, which included students, parents, alumni, and staff, all pitched in to fill up all 80 volunteer slots, making the vaccine clinic a success story. So thank you, Christine, for being here, and thank you, Albertsons.
So now I would like to turn it over to Mr. C. Joseph Chang.
First of all, I like to appreciate all four parties to help us. I think the most valuable service, I think, is a timing issue. You know, in the world, yeah, a lot of affected cases. But just look at the last year, American was a very, they have a lot of cases. We are like in the very tough situation. But what these four parties to help our school district, I think, is a timing issue. I want to remind one more time, like timing. You know, if this time people can offer the testing on the vaccine, it doesn't mean too much. But the early time when we have a need, I think among the San Gabriel Valley, we are the first school district did the vaccine for the teacher and the staff, and even the the student age 12 plus. We also very early stage to finish. So we start, that's the very valuable service we receive from this 4 organization. So I will always remember, the year of 2021 for your service to the San Marino School District. I don't think the city of San Marino, they know, but I already repeat a couple times to city council. I challenge them that what you did for the entire community. I think that the San Marino School District is helping for the entire the citizen and the kid and the finish the vaccination and also provide the testing to prevent for potential case coming. Finally, there's an unknown hero. That's our Dr. Stephen Choi. You can think about stuff from the last year. He was appointed as a compliance officer for COVID-19. So he is working a day and a night, and also trying to update with the LA County Health Department. So we have almost first-hand information to share with our community, the student and the parent. So thank you so much for Steve Choi, your help. Yeah. So. So with that, right now we can invite the 4 organization representative come to accept the certificate.
Absolutely. I would like to invite the Chinatown Service Center, Mr. Jack Chen, to come up to take a picture with our school board. And then after that, we will invite Mr. Weston Sell with COVID-24, and then USC, and then Albertsons. So please come up.
Oh, President, please
Yes,
pass
please do.
the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, Joseph, you should do it. Joseph, you should do it. Please. Mr. Chang is very modest.
Thank you. Yes, to all our honored guests, don't feel obligated to stay for the whole meeting. Thank you.
Again, on behalf of the San Marino School Board, thank you so much for all the organizations and for your partnership. Thank you. Next, 11C is independent study changes, release. Dr. Linda Delatorre.
Yes, thank you, President Ryan, members of the Board of Education. This evening, we would like to provide you with an update on the regulations and requirements of an independent study program that the district will need to offer to students with an underlying medical condition that would be compromised if they were to participate in in-person instruction. And Dr. Lena Richter is going to lead us through that discussion. Dr. Richter?
Thank you, Dr. Delatorre. Good evening, President Ryan, members of the board, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Delatorre, and Cabinet. Tonight, I'm sharing with you a brief overview of the new requirement as part of Assembly Bill 130, which is the education trailer bill with regards to independent study programs for the 2021-2022 school year. The purpose of this presentation is to provide the board with a brief overview of Assembly Bill 130's new independent study requirements for the 21-22 school year, share details of the required independent study changes, and share next steps. I want to begin by sharing that SMUSD is extremely excited to fully reopen schools for in-person instruction for all grades TK through 12 this coming fall. And we look very much forward to having all students, teachers, and staff back on campus for an amazing 21-22 school year. With the authorization of AB 130, which is Assembly Bill 130, new independent study requirements require students with underlying health conditions or whose health would be put at risk by in-person instruction to have the option of participating in an independent study program for the 21-22 school year only, as Dr. Delatorre had stated. Pursuant to AB 130, school districts would be required to offer an independent study option for students who would not be able to attend in person due to health conditions. School districts may select to offer independent study at their own district or select to contract with County Office of Education and other school districts' independent study programs. New language does specify that the new independent study requirements may and can be waived if a school district demonstrates low participation rates in independent study interests, which could result in unreasonable fiscal burden to the district or any other extenuating circumstances, and that the district is unable to contract with county offices of education or other neighboring school districts. School districts are required to provide notice to parents and guardians of students whose health would be put at risk by in-person instruction of the option to enroll in an in-person instruction or an independent study program for the 21-22 school year. Information will also be shared with the parents about the right to request a conference prior to enrolling in independent study, enrollment and disenrollment procedures, and instructional minute requirements, which are listed here by grade level spans. So as you can see, the instructional minute requirements for TK through grade 3 would require for independent study daily synchronous instruction. For grades 4 through 8, the requirement would be daily live interaction and at minimum weekly synchronous instruction. And lastly, for grades 9 through 12, at minimum weekly synchronous instruction. The bottom right corner of this slide does provide the definitions for live interaction and synchronous instruction. To receive apportionment for students participating in independent study, board policy must also be adopted to include information on tiered re-engagement strategies for students who are, excuse me, I think I skipped a slide there. I'm going back. Board policy would be amended or adopted to include information on tiered re-engagement strategies for students who are repeatedly or chronically absent from independent study, transition plans for students requesting to return to in-person instruction at any time during the 21-22 school year, and daily live instructional minute requirements. Now we'll move on to the next slide. Written learning agreements are also required for independent study to ensure that students will continue to have access to connectivity and technology needed to access the curriculum and learning. Student supports for students who are not performing at grade level throughout the year. course outlines and expectations, as well as the instructional minute requirements for each of the grade level spans. Documentation of attendance and participation, just like all other years, is also required through independent study. It is important to note that the tiered re-engagement strategies, the daily live and synchronous instruction and transitional plans are not applicable to the traditional independent study programs that are usually less than 15 days. For next steps, San Marino will continue to prepare for an exciting, engaging, full return to in-person learning this fall. Is that me? Sorry. Survey parents and guardians to determine the need for independent study for students who have an underlying health condition or whose health will be put at risk by in-person instruction. The survey has already been developed and is currently being translated so that families will have access to the survey in a language that they can understand. And the survey is planned to go out this week. It is an interest survey so that we can gauge interest in the independent study program for the 21-22 school year. And lastly, plan implementation of next steps as needed. So once we get the survey information back, we will continue to plan next steps for our independent study program for the 21-22 school year for those students who may need it due to underlying health conditions or whose health will be put at risk for when they return, if they were to return to school. And that is a brief overview of the new changes with Assembly Bill 130 with regards to independent study for the 21-22 school year only. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Can I ask one question? I saw that there was an ability for students to go from independent study back to in-person. Do the guidelines also set forth that students, if they decide or the family decides at one point to go from independent study, going either way, back and forth, is that possible?
That is an excellent question. And that is one of the questions that I had asked when I tried to reach out to the County Office of Education to get guidance, as well as the California Department of Education. They are still trying to clarify and interpret the true intent of the law. And the response they had given me was probably because if a student's health is at risk, we do not want to subject them to the classroom environment where, you know, their health would be at risk. But they will continue to provide all of the school districts, the LEAs, that information as they finalize and get clarification. But they believe so that it could go either way.
And is the threshold for a student's health being at risk when the parent says the student's health is at risk, or does it require something further?
Currently, as the law states, it is determined by the parent or guardian.
All right, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Okay.
I had just two questions. So one clarification was, you said that the independent study doesn't apply to the circumstances in which they're less than 15. So that's like that normal, we have a policy, it's a different, this is a different independent study
Correct.
program. What about students who might be quarantined because of COVID? I guess we still have to kind of work that out and figure that out, I assume, because that wouldn't necessarily fall in there. Or I guess maybe that might apply to what Mr. Kalaki was saying.
Yeah, for students who are in quarantine, I think it would be a little bit different. Again, I'm hoping that's something that the CDE would be able to provide clarification and guidance on. I know that when I reached out, I was informed that I was probably one of 100 school districts that had reached out because I think school districts are still trying to interpret what the true intent of the law is. And there are so many factors that play into this, such as instructional minutes. And that's one thing that I will share. When I called, I wanted to clarify instructional minutes. Are they the same instructional minutes that were pursuant to SB 98, which was the distance learning bill? And I was informed that they are not. It is going to be, since SB 98 did sunset on June 30th, the instructional requirements will resume as they were pre-COVID, the state mandated instructional minutes. So those will apply to this independent study program.
And then my other question was, you said that a survey was going out to the parents, and that is an interest survey, not a commitment survey.
Correct. It is an interest survey because that survey will give us the data to help us prepare our next steps.
So as a parent looking to answer it, what is it that would be most useful from you in asking, like what, because I think sometimes there's a question of, well, I think if I answer it this way, like there's almost like a game to it. But what do you really need and what's really the purpose of the information you're trying to gather here?
Thank you for asking that. The purpose of this independent study program under AB 130 is to provide an option for students to continue to learn whose health would be at risk if they were to return to the classroom. So that is the lens that we would like parents to use as they're completing the survey, is they need to determine if their students' health would be at risk if the students were to return onto campus for learning in the fall.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there, President Ryan, is there a deadline that we are going to ask parents, right, to make that determination or notify the district?
The deadline that we have currently set for our interest survey is Monday, July 19th. Monday, July 19th.
But that's just a survey, right? That's not
Correct.
the actual notification. So do we have a plan for when the deadline must?
We are working on that as we speak. The governor did sign AB 130 on July 9th, just a few days ago. And so now that we have authorization of the bill, we will be moving forward. And the data that we receive from the interest survey will help us plan our timeline for sending out the notice to parents and receiving their feedback.
And understanding, right, because we still don't know the actual parameters, right?
Right.
Do we have any estimation in terms of cost per student or cost per student? And then in addition, is the state going to provide us extra funds to help with this particular, AB 130?
We have not received any notification that we will be receiving additional funds at this time. It doesn't mean that we will not be, down the line once we see what the interest is across the state and all the school districts. We have not fleshed out the anticipated cost per student yet. Of course, it will look different depending on if we're able to offer it within SMUSD. It will look different than if we were offering it to students who will be maintaining an inter-district permit to attend the independent study in another school district, neighboring school district, or contracting with LA County Office of Education for their independent study program.
And then just to add to what Mr. Kalaki stated, so the threshold is simply if a parent says, my child is at risk. So there's no additional documentation needed, no doctor's order. It's just a simple statement that a parent signs and that is sufficient.
That is currently how it is stated in the bill, yes.
And as I understand it, the on-ramp and off-ramp has specific dates and requirements for the school to get our students into school or out in terms of independent studies, right? And then, so in terms of what Mrs. Jack was saying about funding, is there specific training for our teachers that might be doing independent study? Because, it's a different delivery or way in which to deliver instruction. And how do we help to mitigate the learning loss that's already taken place when, again, we're using another model to deliver instruction?
Yes, and those are all factors that we are taking into consideration, questions that we are asking ourselves, because of course, independent study will look different at the elementary level compared to the secondary level where students have 5 or 6, oftentimes 7 classes that they're enrolled in of different subject areas. And so we will continue to keep the board apprised of all the information that we glean from the County Office of Education as well as from the California Department of Education.
Great. Okay. Okay. So my last question would be, as you mentioned, that independent study can be just a note from the parents saying, this is my interest, this is my choice. How about that gray area with the students that have social, emotional needs? It's not a medical need, but perhaps anxiety or other things that come at play here, because we've been socially isolating for 15, 16 months. And so now you get the kids back into the environment, whether it be independent or in person. And so there is that learning that's got to go on. But are there some gray areas in which parents can make that determination and call it medical and then keep children home. You're
Well, and-
smiling.
I'm smiling because that's also a question that we have been asking. And we know that we do want students to return to school. That socialization piece is key for mental health, social emotional well-being. And so the the County Office of Education and the California Department of Education have not delineated whether it's for the physical health or for the social emotional health. I am anticipating them to use it as an umbrella for all health, whether it's physical or mental health, but they have not clarified that yet.
Yeah.
And we will continue to share that with the board and keep the board updated as we get more information. Because many school districts are asking, we're all all of us are calling each other, trying to understand what the parameters are of this new law and what the intent of it is.
Yeah, and I'm so glad Stephanie Duncan is here and Liz Kinnear is here, because we were able towards the end of summer school to experience the joy of children returning back to school. Ladies, will you just come up for a second and share a little bit about that last day? Come on. Yeah. You didn't think you were coming and not being called, did you? Security.
It was security. I know that's what you kept telling me, so security, or get her out of here. It was really fun. The last day of school, we had Gil turned on the sprinklers in the back in the playground, and the kids, we had a shaved ice truck, and the kids got to go and pick out their flavors or whatever they wanted. No mask. Everybody was running through the sprinklers. Everybody's having a great time. And all through summer school, it was that way, though. I mean, Kelly came up with this thing about Fridays. We're going to have happy Fridays. And so it was either a funny hat day, or it was just all kinds of things she came up with, which cost money. But I said, what the heck? I don't care. This year I just didn't care. I said, do it for the kids. Let's have fun. And I tell you, we got so many letters from parents saying how much they appreciated us doing what we did, and how their children just loved it. And they couldn't wait to go to school, and they couldn't wait to go out in the playground, and they looked forward to Fridays, crazy Friday days. And that was our teacher, our wonderful teacher, Kelly Duncan, who did that. She was great, thinking up things to do. And she was just really awesome. But we really had a good time this year. I know Liz's grandkids came, and they had a
the
good
best time, but we interacted with the kids, and a few of the kids said, and especially one little girl, I think she's probably a third grader, said, I hope my mom lets me come here again. They just had the best time, the smiles, the joy of.
And I try to get the truck up at the high school, but Ryan says, they don't need it up here at the high school. They don't need it. I go, yes, they do. They do need it. They need it. You're laughing over there. I know. But they probably would have really loved it. But I guess it's more intense at the high school. So he said, no. So anyway, but they had a great time, and I'm glad we did it. So thank you.
I think
And you came.
the end of the day, there were over 100 kids.
Yeah.
participated.
That went through more than that.
Yeah, all the kids in K through 7, and Kelly, went from K through 2nd, and then 3rd through 6th, and then the older kids came in. And they kind of tend to, Mike Clacky's son is one of them. He just kind of shuffles in, and they
Yeah.
really go on, and he loves it. He was running through the sprinklers and having a great time. So it was really fun, and I'm glad we got to do it. And Shelley came, and I think you had a good time too, didn't you?
I
Shelley?
did.
I know we kept trying to get her to run through the sprinklers, but she wouldn't do it. But it was fun. But thank you.
But we got Leo to be present and open his eyes. Remember?
I know.
Initially,
That's
and
my
he,
22-month-old grandson.
I know. He always goes like this, thinking that she can't see him. If he shuts his eyes, she can't see him. So it's wonderful.
It was a great event.
Yeah, it was.
And I think a wonderful summer school.
Yeah, it turned out really well.
thank you so much.
President Ryan, I have one more question.
Thank you.
What is the correlation, if any, if my child does independent study, can my child also participate in athletics? So is there a correlation? Is there a prohibition? What are the parameters?
I'm going to find that information out for you. That's a great question. That's a great question.
It's a good question, but one would surmise that if it's a health issue, to be around other students, that participating in athletics or some other activity might compromise the student's health as well. But all of these are very good questions. And because This information was just so recently
Yeah.
released.
5
We really
days.
haven't had time to vet it all
4
out.
days.
But we
4.
wanted to make sure we get it out in front of the board as soon as possible, because I'm sure these are questions that you will all be asked out in the community, and we want to arm you with as much information as we can. So rest assured, the executive team, and particularly Dr. Letta Richter, will be really delving into the research on this, and we will be getting it out to you as expeditiously as possible.
Yeah, and as Dr. Delatorre said, it would be irresponsible of us if we did not share it with the board at this time.
Mhm.
And the value of sharing it with you early is to gain your questions that we may not have asked, and take that back and get answers and bring it back to our district and to the board.
Thank you so much, Dr. Delatorre and Dr. Richter, for bringing the informational item, language for independent study, trailer bill AB 130. And so we'll look forward to more information and will be updated. 12, communication from the audience regarding matters on the action agenda are to be made at this time. This is an informational item, action item, procedural item. And so, Dr. Choi, will you give us the designated time for public comment?
Absolutely. We are pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding action items on the agenda. If you would like to speak on the action items, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. We have less than 30 seconds. If you would like to make a request to speak regarding action items on the agenda, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. President Ryan, we have no requests.
Thank you so much, Dr. Choi. And I know in the next item, it says action item procedural appointment of acting superintendent. It does say Board President Ryan, but at this time, it's an action item. The Board of Education will vote to appoint an acting superintendent, which was retroactively effective as of July 1st. I'd like to call on our board clerk, Jane Chung, Mrs. Chung.
I make a motion to appoint Dr. Delatorre as acting superintendent in light of Dr. Wilson's departure. The acting superintendent will be assigned duties temporarily during a transition period to cover extra duties until such time as the board makes a determination for hiring and retaining a permanent superintendent.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Chong, and thank you, Mr. Kalaki. With that, I'd like to do a roll call. Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Chong,
Aye.
Mrs. Jack,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. And so the action item motion has been approved. The appointment of our acting superintendent, Dr. Linda Delatorre.
Am I permitted to say something?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I would just like to thank this board for their trust and faith in me. And while I am in the acting superintendent role, I will do my absolute level best to represent each of you well and to provide you with the information that you all need to be successful and to make sure that the work of the district is getting done on time. And I will work really hard on making sure that schools get reopened in a very positive and enthusiastic manner. Thank you for your trust and faith. I will not disappoint you.
All right, I often forget my place, but here I am at 13B, reorganization of 2021 officers. This is also an action item. The board will elect someone to serve as vice president for the 2021 year to fill the vacancy of Mr. Corey Barbary. I'd like to nominate Mrs. Nam Jack to fill vice president for 2021.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Chong. And so roll call, Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Chong,
Aye.
Mrs. Jack, you don't get a say. No, you can't decline. Almost made that mistake of calling her. So Mrs. Jack is saying yes, right?
Yes, but but I don't think I can vote, right? I'd be voting for myself.
No, you do get to vote. I vote for myself all the time. No, I do have to do roll call.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I should, okay, aye.
Okay, she didn't have a choice. Mrs. Ryan, aye, and so the motion has been unanimously approved. So congratulations, Ms. Vice President. 13C, appointments to board committees, board representatives. This is an action item, and the board will decide on board-appointed committee members to represent, fill the vacancies left by Mr. Corey Barbary and Mrs. Julie Chan Lin for the following. So first, we have an opening in Academic Advisory Committee. Who would like to join me since I'm already on the committee?
I'd like to be considered.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Sorry. I know that they did not meet last year, so is this?
Right, they did not meet last year, but I think with the school's opening, we will be able to meet again. Did you want to put your name in the hat?
That's
No?
fine, Mr.
Okay,
Kalaki.
so,
I have a question.
Yes.
So since we have two school board no longer here, so we have the two new one. So is that we will just each one they take the position. So is that they will assume the new school board member will assume the previous one, or we want to rearrange?
we can do it that way. So in terms of the seats that were provisionally appointed, Mrs. Jack replaced Mr. Barbary, so she can look at some of those positions. I think she should have first dip. Mr. Kalaki replaced Mrs. Chan Lin, so it looks like he's lining up that way. We always want to make sure that the committees and representatives are uniform, like liberal across, so everyone has positions, because these are committees that prepare you for leadership roles, right? And so you have duties to report back to the board if there's something going on that's relevant to the board's decisions, but also you make a time commitment to attend those and to be proactive in what you're doing there. So, but I don't want one person to have, a monopoly on the roles.
Well, to that though, I
Yeah.
just wanted to raise that there are a couple of committees that are defunct.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure that we so if we're going to talk about making sure everybody has a good spread.
Yeah, but remember, when the schools are now fully reopened, the academic advisory.
Not that
Yeah,
one.
okay.
Right, but like,
but-
for example,
okay.
the facility advisory committee is not in effect, or the first task force, or the San Marino Recreation Committee. And I'm bringing those up because I'm on them. So I'm kind of like,
So you're not doing anything.
Yes, I'm not
then.
doing
Yeah,
anything.
okay.
So I mean,
Well,
if you don't
then,
want me to do anything, that's fine,
but then you may want to sign up for other things, but then if those committees start meeting again, you would still be responsible for that. So that's why I'm just being cautious that you don't sign up for everything, then all of a sudden things open up and then, you're scrambling. But again, the committee, our board works together. There are often times when President Chang represents me because I can't make it to a meeting, so I'm calling him, but I could very easily call any one of you guys and said, help me out. I'm behind traffic or whatever, can one of you guys attend? And now that we're not Zooming as much, it's in person. So it's important. So do you want me to go down the list or you guys just want to?
I would like to change.
Okay,
Well-
because Mr. Chang has said, can we just sub out the people for the seats?
Whatever we want to change, we can discuss later, but I just want to share with each of you because we have a new board member. So traditionally, there's three committee, always board president and vice president to serve for the committee. Like academic advisory committee, but the last year, the Julie Chandin, take over. And besides that, the PTA council representative always board president and VP. And then San Marino School Foundation too, yeah, also the board president and vice president. And the rest of just based on the individual preference, yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Chang, I've noted PTA council representative for Mrs. Jack as VP and foundation with Mrs. Jack, and then academic advisory when we do reopen. So then everything else is open in terms of who's no longer here.
Well, I thought that Mr. Kalaki was doing an academic advisory because we had already departed from the pattern of
Yeah.
vice president. I don't know if you want it.
That was
Well,
that was Mr. Barbary's schedule.
Yes.
In terms of that, because it was, for some reason, it was a Wednesday. It used to be always Wednesday. And I don't know how that transpired, but we can work with Mike and Mrs. Jack about, Mr. Clacky and Mrs. Jack, and we can it does, yeah.
If Board Member Jack would like it. If not, then I'm happy to fill the role.
I'm fine with Mr. Kalaki doing it.
Okay, so you guys are going to leave it up to me then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, city liaison has been Mr. Chang, and now it'll be Mr. Kalaki.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that. Thanks.
I would actually request to be on that one because I just don't have anything. I mean, as it kind of falls in line, if we do have the San Marino Recreation Committee representative work, that does already fall with the city as well.
Okay, so we'll put both your names down. In the past, it's been, because Mrs. Chanlin did not attend, Mr. Chang has been meeting with the city council with me. So we've been meeting together, but I'd be happy to look into that for the two of you guys.
If Mr. Chang is willing to not.
No, I meant one of you guys will join Mr. Chang.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have to have the transition of someone who's been there for all the meetings this past year, so that it isn't brand new people, because then you won't know what we've been talking about.
I'm
yeah.
fine with Board Member John having that position if you'd like it.
Okay,
I
thank you.
think it's important that they be filled by people that are definitely very interested in it. I have an interest, but she's definitely interested, so that's fine.
Okay, so the facilities advisory, you're saying it has not been meeting? That's the
No, I
first
mean,
one?
Yeah, that's not in effect at all, Dr. Delatorre, right?
Not yet.
Yeah, but it's, yeah.
So if
Not
it
yet.
resumes, then that's something I
Yes.
would continue with, and I guess then at that point, we have to replace Mr. Barbary.
I'm fine with filling that second spot.
Okay.
I mean, we continue to have facility issues, so I would imagine that it's going to, unless it's been officially disbanded, but then
No.
it'll revive at
Yeah.
one point, I'm sure.
It's just because of the school. First task force, was that in operation?
For this one, I want to make some comment. Since I was serving for first task force. To be honest to you, for our as a small school district, I really cannot find whether we can have a more revenue. Even we keep a discussion, yeah. So like this one, later we also put the first package as an agenda, and also we besides first package, we also talk about the parcel tax. Yeah, so right now we are successful. So I don't know if we for next 12 months we want to discuss about parcel tax, probably not.
Right.
But then maybe the 2 more years we will have another one come in. Then the time, yeah, we need to discuss. So I would like to suggest maybe the acting superintendent and the board president, you guys can maybe discuss.
Okay.
See, or you want to create another committee instead of this one.
Right. Okay.
Because but I think to me the last vehicle to get the revenue, I think is the alumni of San Marino High School. So if we can reach out, there's a successful the alumni, they want to write a big check. So maybe can consider as the revenue, but rest of I think it's very difficult. Yeah.
Thank you. And then with health benefits, so we'll leave the first task as it's not active, and then Dr. Delatorre and I will work on further exploration of similar type of committee. Health benefits committee, Mr. Chang, you'll stay on and continue working on that. LACSTA representative, I'm looking for a partner for LACSTA, and that's LA County School Trustees Association.
I'd be happy to fill that.
Okay. And then legislative representative, Mrs. Chong, was there anything going on there?
There was a lot going on, but I don't know. I mean, there's just constantly ongoing legislation coming down.
So, Mr. Kalaki, would you like to join Mrs. Chong, because that's Mrs. Chen Lin's position?
Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
And for this committee, I like to ask our board member to clarify, because before there's a retired school board also serve for committee. So either that represent to San Marino Unified School District, or he represent by himself. Board president, I'm asking.
Okay, so this past half a year, former school board member was representing. He was one of the directors, but right now we have Mrs. Chong as representative and Mr. Kalaki, so we'll be able to inform the former member about your role. Okay. So next, Mrs. Jack and I will represent PTA, attend the PTA Council representative. San Marino Recreation Committee representative, Ms. Chong, you said they're not active right now?
I believe they are not active.
Okay, so we'll leave you on, and if it becomes active with the opening of school, if you can let us know, then we can, make sure. The reason why we have 2 members on each of the committee is if one can't make it, the other person is still there, but also in terms of just bringing the information back, we want to make sure that we have that access to all of the committees that we're working on. Safety and wellness, Mr. Chang and myself, and the foundation, Mrs. Jack and I will represent at the foundation. And remember, these committees change annually, so it's not that it's permanent. And right now we're just reorganizing till the end of this year. That's only 3 more months, really, because starting December, we're going to be having this conversation again, whether or not committees are active or, what's going on. Compensation for board members. Did you know you guys get paid? I didn't know that. But here we are. It's an action item, and we would like you to consider, in accordance with the provisions of section 35120A5 of the California Education Code, board members for a district of less than 10,000 ADA, more than 1,000 ADA, are entitled to receive a maximum of $240 compensation per month. The board is being asked to determine the amount, which is $240, and will receive in their services, but we are asking you for your commitment to donate it back to the school.
I have a question.
Yes.
So on the last November, I already give up. Should I give up one more time or not?
Yes, you just keep giving up your 240.
I
Write
thought
that check.
this is the
Seth, you
agenda.
pick up the check.
I already give up 20 years.
So the question is being asked, I think you and
Is
Mrs.
this
Chong.
just for the
Yes,
name and?
yes. But for Mr. Kalaki, a different number. I'll be writing that out for you, what you will be owing. So Mrs. Jack and Mr. Kalaki, I would like to ask you to consider having that amount go back to the schools, if you will.
I go ahead.
If it's all right, Mr. Kalaki, I'd like to make a motion that we decide not to accept the statutorily mandated amount that we could receive.
Okay.
I would second that motion.
Thank you so much. So that was Mrs. Jack making the motion, Mr. Kalaki second. And then do I do a roll call for the two of them? Just the two of them? Okay. Because we vote, you give it up. So Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mrs. Jack.
Aye.
All right. And the motion passes. Our two board members join us with $0, zero sum income, Stephanie. All right. 13E CSBA nominations. This is an action item. The Board of Education will discuss and nominate a CSBA delegate assembly representative to replace the vacancy of Mrs. Julie Chan Lin. She also had expressed to me that they were not, or she didn't know what she was supposed to do. And so I guess whoever assumes this as a delegate, you do get to vote. You have to go to the assemblies to do that. And I guess you just have to get more information, but she didn't know how to do it, or wasn't aware of what her role was. So I'm just letting you know. Would someone like to take care of that?
I'll take that back on.
Okay. Mrs. Chong.
We need to have a motion.
Okay, so I make the motion that Mrs. Chong be nominated as CSBA delegate to represent the vacancy.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Roll call.
Aye.
Mr. Kalaki, Mr. Chang.
Aye.
Mrs. Namjack.
Aye.
Mrs. Chong.
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye, and the motion has passed. Certification of signatures. Dr. Linda Delatorre, this is an action item. Authorization from the Board of Education is requested for newly appointed board member Mike Kalaki and Director of Special Education Services, Reiki Komar. Authorization is also requested for the Huntington Middle School Assistant Principal, Mary Hazlett, to sign school site contracts not to exceed $5,000 or less and warrants drawn on ASB, Associated Student Body Accounts. Dr. Linda Delatorre.
Thank you so much, President Ryan, members of the board. With that description, we are seeking the board's approval to add Michael Kalaki, Rocky Komar, and Mary Hazlett to the list of certification of authorized signatures. We just need your approval.
So roll call.
Mhm,
Do I
please.
have a motion? It's an action item.
Move to certify the signatures of Special Education Services Rocky Komar, Board Member Mr. Michael Kalaki, and HMS Assistant Principal Mary Hazlett.
Thank you, Mrs. Chong. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Roll call, Mrs. Jack.
Aye.
Mrs. Chong,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye, and the motion has passed. So moved. 13G 2021-22 Consolidated Application for Funding. Dr. Linda Delatorre, this is an action item. It's recommended the board authorize the district to submit its consolidated application for funding for the 2021-22 school year. It's a discussion / action item.
Thank you, President Ryan, members of the board. As a condition of receiving federal funding for Titles 1, 2, 3, and 4, the consolidated application must be completed and submitted via the consolidated application reporting system. So you have before you this evening the completed consolidated application, and we would like to receive your approval so that we may submit and process this document. Are there any questions or?
May I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the consolidated application for funding for Title 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Thank you, Mrs. Jack.
Second.
Mr. Chang, thank you. And so with that roll call, Mrs. Jack,
Aye.
Mrs. Chong,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye, and the motion has passed for action item 13G. 13H, approval of provisional internship permit. Dr. Linda Delatorre.
Thank you, President Ryan, members of the board. We have a certificated member of our San Marino High School teaching staff who is currently on a provisional internship permit, which typically expires at the end of the year. This individual is pursuing her teaching credential. She is getting a single subject in physical education, and she needs additional time to complete her program. Therefore, the district is coming to the Board of Education to ask for a year extension for this teacher to be able to complete her credential requirements, and it takes an action of the board to be able to do that.
Was this the time extension primarily because of COVID, and so she was not able to take some of the coursework? And
Yes,
okay.
it was a combination of the pandemic and also the workload that she had as a first-year teacher at San Marino High School. And so her program has definitely been delayed. However, she does expect to complete it by the end of this school year.
Excellent, thank you.
So
may-
actually, this just asking for the extension, right?
right,
And how long the extension?
1 year. Mhm. So that would be for the 21-22 school year. And this credential program should be completed by the end of this school year.
what's her subject area?
PE, physical education.
Is there any impact in terms of supervisory role as an intern?
No. The principal will check in with her and oversee her work and evaluate her. But at this stage in her credential program, there is not a requirement that someone supervise her on the job.
Okay, may I have a motion?
I move to approve the provisional internship permit for this teacher for an extension for the school year.
Thank you, Mrs. Chong.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Kalaki. With that roll call, Mrs. Jack,
Aye.
Mrs. Chong,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. The motion has been approved. 13I, declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 2021-22 school year. This is an action item. The district seeking approval for a declaration of need for fully qualified educators in the area of CLAD for out-of-state teachers. This is a discussion action item. Dr. Linda Delatorre.
Thank you, President Ryan, members of the Board of Education. This is a procedural item that will come before the Board of Education each and every year. It is required by the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing that the school district identify potential areas of credential needs where teachers may come to us from other states that do not have reciprocity with California. We do anticipate the potential hiring of some out-of-state teachers this year who may not have completed their CLAD authorization to to provide services to English language learners in the state of California. And therefore, they will need time to complete those requirements in California. So this declaration of need for fully qualified educators allows the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing and the Los Angeles County Office of Education to be able to approve those requests. So we need board approval on this document.
I have a question.
Sure.
Because right now we still hiring some teacher, right? So
Yes.
So tonight we approve, is that the time we hire, we need to approve again or no?
No, this document is good for the 21-22 school year.
Mhm.
And so anybody that we hire from out of state that does not possess a CLAD authorization will be covered by this document. The district will have to apply for a permit so that they're allowed to, on an emergency basis, provide that service. But we wouldn't be able to get authorization without having the board first approve this document.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
May I have a motion? This is an action item.
I move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Chang.
A second.
Thank you, Mrs. Chung. Mrs. Jack, may I have your,
Aye.
thank you, Mrs. Chung,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan. The motion has been approved for 13J. No, yes, 13I, right?
Aye.
Aye, sorry. Tentative agreement, 13J, tentative agreement with California School Employees Association, CSEA, local chapter number 120. This is an action item. The district and CSEA reached an agreement which will be presented to the board for approval. This is a discussion action item. Dr. Linda Delatorre.
Thank you, President Ryan, members of the Board of Education, executive team. We have completed our negotiations with CSEA Chapter 120 for the 2020-21 school year. The tentative agreement that you have before you this evening memorializes that and also modifies the term of the existing collective bargaining agreement. So we are going to begin negotiations for the 21-22 school year, probably within the next couple of weeks. And this closes out last year so that neither party is obligated to go back on a retroactive basis to negotiate any of the terms of the agreement that were in place during that year. With that, I would request the board's approval on this tentative agreement.
I make a motion to approve this tentative agreement with the CSEA.
Thank you, Mrs. Jack.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Kalaki. Mrs. Jack,
Aye.
Mrs. Chung,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye, and the motion has passed. Board Superintendent discussion items, procedural item.
I have a two question, yeah. So last time I mentioned we should introduce our student school board, but we forget to introduce. So who is the new student school board?
She's no.
So I believe she was introduced earlier in the year, right, prior to the end of school by our outgoing student board member. Is that correct, Mrs. Delatorre?
Introduced her at the May 25th board meeting.
Yes, and go ahead.
Well, I think in Zoom, but I think you might be referring to having her in person.
Yeah, and we would like to have her in person, and she has not been available. I'm not sure if she's traveling with her family over the summer, but as soon as she does become physically available, she will be here and we can introduce her to the Board of Education in person. So we apologize for that. We just haven't been able to get her to show up in person yet.
Okay, so Dr. Delatorre, superintendent discussion item.
One more.
Oh,
yeah.
one more. Oh, I'm
So,
sorry.
after summer school over, is that the summer office time still Monday to Friday or will
Office
be?
hours.
Oh,
So can let us know so
Yeah.
sometimes we know the office is closed. So if it's,
mhm.
parent they are asking, so we can say that today is closed. Yeah.
Sure. So, yes, the office will be reopening, the week before school starts. I'm not sure what the date is. The ladies in the office, I'm sure know. But at that time, the office will reopen 5 days a week. Currently, staff is working, 4/10s for the most part. Some of us are here 5 days a week. So we just haven't reopened the doors to the public.
So still accepting the application for the new student, right?
Yes, absolutely. Mrs. Jiang has been very busy. This is her high season, and she's been very busy processing new registrations and applications. So
She working the Monday to Friday or just Monday?
she is. We're trying to get her to take some vacation days. She's going to be very, very busy assisting with translating documents in the first day packet that are going to be online. And so in addition to her processing registrations and enrollment, she does translations. So we're working on that as well.
And for enrollment, since you brought that up, it's TK through 12 that we are registering currently.
Yes. Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
All right.
welcome.
Did you have anything for 14?
I just wanted to remind the board that we do have a strategic planning meeting at the Huntington on July 30th. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Joseph Chang for making those arrangements. The Huntington was not planning on allowing the public access to any of their facilities until August. So he, I think, pulled some strings and made it happen for us. So thank you so much for that.
Just keep quiet.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Chang. Sorry,
now
Mr.
it's
Chang.
out.
Yeah, it's out now. Sorry.
Open, yeah.
Yeah.
Finally, I think
Yeah.
they open.
But I did want to thank you for that, because when we initially called to make those arrangements, they were like, sorry. And I'm like, okay, who do I know? Mr. Chang, it's the most well-connected person on the planet. So that is going to happen. And we do have a facilitator coming out to facilitate a new beginnings workshop, which will include a look back at the existing board protocols that we have. So the board will be able to take a look at what is in play currently and decide if they want to make any changes to that document. It is in the form of a handbook that was previously worked on by a CSBA facilitator by the name of Luann Rivera. This lady who's coming out to facilitate is a former board member. She served 2 terms in the Roland Unified School District, and she is also an educator and a director of programs at Mount SAC. She comes highly recommended. She is somebody who has experience working with many, many boards on behalf of CSBA, and I think that you will enjoy working with her. In addition to that, the first hour will be spent on just a refresher on the Brown Act, and we do have an attorney coming out from DWK to provide that to the board, which I think will be helpful and useful going forward.
Thank you. And so with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting, but remind the board that we are returning to closed session. So don't try to leave. Security, where's my Stephanie's over there, and my boy's going to try and leave. Okay. All right. The meeting is adjourned.